folks, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio, the Biz World channel, the NBC Network, the whole shebang here with my incredible guest today. Because I mean, when I mean incredible, I've had so many incredible people, but I wanted to highlight this particular attribute and characteristic to my guest today because of the work he's done, and it's an interesting and an impressive background that he has. He is a thought leader, an innovator. Best-selling author, a podcaster, yoga master. I mean, entrepreneur. I mean, if you think about it, he's doing it and he's done it. But also, he's a former, retired commander, Navy SEAL commander. So that's a big one, Navy SEAL commander. So there's a lot of work, and when we talk about Navy SEALs, I mean, it's often attached to team and effort and leadership and strategy and tactical stuff. So it's pretty intense stuff that they go through to be in there. But I mean, we're going to talk about all that stuff today. He obviously coaches executives and leaders, and author of multiple books, and we're going to talk about his latest book, Uncommon, which just hearing the word uncommon, you might question what that is all about. And frankly, there's a lot to digest or to break down in that word alone. And so without any further ado, Mark Divine. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hurricane, thanks for having me, brother. Nice to be here.
It is a pleasure, dude. And by the way, do I want to share this? Well, you'll tell us about your code name, when you were in a commander in the SEALs.
It was Cyborg. SEALs and pilots always get a nickname, and mine was Cyborg.
Hurricane and Cyborg. I don't know if we're doing a good. It's gonna be
two of those. It's gonna be brutal.
Brutal, dangerous. All right. Well. Listen. So let's talk about your journey. I mean, not everybody makes it to the SEALs, and it's an iconic team, right? I mean, everybody talks about it. Movies. I mean, there's real stories about Navy SEALs. Different teams out there, and some are, I guess, more highly than others. But like your journey, just as a background that got you into stuff, and the stuff that you really learned being on a SEAL team, because
Sure.
a lot of it, one of my former mentors is a former captain, Air Force captain. So different branch and different work, but military teaches a lot of skills, and
Right.
doesn't matter what branch, control, command, all this stuff, there's discipline, leadership, all this stuff. Let's talk about the journey that got you into it, because a lot of the stuff is applicable to real life. It's applicable to business, specifically, and certainly, your journey to write books and teach and, do all the stuff that you do.
Right.
You also have the podcast that you're, out there with, talking to people and experts. So let's talk about the journey that got you into this. Well, to the SEALs first.
Yeah, for the SEALs, it's kind of an unusual journey. I mean, most of the guys, I train a lot of Navy SEAL candidates. I have done that since 2006. And, a lot of these guys come to me and they're like, yeah, I've wanted to be a SEAL since I was 12, right? I watched, let's see the movies and, and it's all over the place, right? The SEALs had this iconic reputation right now. But I joined in 1989 and there was no information about the SEALs, no TV shows, no movies. And it was still a really secret organization. And I didn't grow up in a military family, and I really wasn't interested in the military. So this is kind of the weird thing, right? Anyway, so when I graduated college, I went to New York City to be in business, right? I was in finance. So starting out with Coopers and Lybrand, which now is PricewaterhouseCoopers, one of the biggest consulting accounting firms in the world. And they sent me to NYU, get my MBA, and I was working away, becoming a CPA, MBA, and cranking away. And long story short, because I was an athlete growing up, right? I grew up in a small town in upstate New York, and kind of a chaotic home, right? A lot of trauma, a lot of chaos, a lot of alcohol, and so I didn't have a lot of confidence, believe it or not. I was what I would call a pretty common kid, but I spent a lot of time outside, and I spent a lot of time in sports, and I got into endurance sports, and so this was like the beginning of my mental training. Endurance sports are phenomenal for training the mind, right? You get especially competitive swimming. I was a triathlete, and rowing crew. So I developed a fair amount of kind of mental toughness and grit. I still didn't have the confidence that I was looking for. So here I am in New York, and I was not willing to let my body slide. Like I see all these kind of fat, pasty people in suits, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to be a lifetime athlete, you know. Didn't mean I needed to play a sport, but I was always going to be training my body and my mind. I just was part of who I was at that time, which is uncommon. I guess that was the first sign of being uncommon. So I would run in the morning. I would go to the gym at lunch when all my peers would go have their little, you know, high carb meal. And I had a block of time between when Cooper's would let me off and then I would go to NYU at night. And this was back when NYU was down at the World Trade Center downtown. And so most people would go home and, you know, it was a cohort program. There's 75 of us in this program. It wasn't just Cooper's and Lime, it was like a bunch of the big 8 firms. So they would go home and get ready for school and have dinner and, you know, whatever. And I looked at that 2.5 hours as a time where I could do some more training. And I was kind of pondering what I should do. And one night I was walking home to my apartment on 22nd Street in Manhattan. And I stumbled past this martial arts studio on 23rd Street. And I literally was just really just had to pause underneath it because I heard all this crazy noise coming out of the second floor of this building. And I looked up and it said, there was a sign, it said World Sado Karate Headquarters. I'm like, huh, wonder if that could be my thing, you know? So I went up there and I was just dumbstruck by this place. Like it was massive and there were like hundreds of students. And in the center was this small Japanese guy, about 5'4", who was just like this rock. But he was, he had this energy about him that I'd never seen before, like a super lightness of being and very playful, spontaneous, but very stern. You know, founder of the school, he had a few 100,000 students worldwide. It was only 10 years in. So I was like, okay, I'm doing this. Whatever he is, you know, maybe some of that will rub off on me, right? That confidence and that way of being. So I started studying karate there too. So this is while I'm working full time in a new job, getting my MBA at night, getting my CPA. Now I'm also studying, you know, to get a black belt. Well, a couple months into this, I asked to stay to see the black belt class, and they said no problem. So I started watched the black belt class and like, oh wow, these guys are amazing. You know, there's everywhere from first degree to sixth degree black belts from all over the city, and some of them even from internationally come over. And after the black belt class, everyone's filing out and the lights get turned down, but I see a small group of people bringing out these little wooden benches and lighting a candle and talking in like hushed tones. And I said, what are they doing? And the guy said, oh, that's the Zen class. I said, what's Zen? He said, oh, it's a form of meditation. And I said, well, and he goes, get the book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, by a guy named Suzuki, and it'll tell you all about it. So I got the book. I read it. I don't think I understood much of it, but I was intrigued because it's talking about training the mind to tap into, you know, some sort of energy source, you know, going beyond the ordinary states of reality that are known to most people. And so I was like really, really intrigued. So I asked the sensei, Nakamura, right? His name was Grandmaster Nakamura. And I said, can I do this Zen class? I mean, I noticed there's only black belts, it's like 10 or 12. And he said, certainly, yeah, join us. And we meet Thursday nights for an hour. And then, so I started training in Zen along with the martial arts. And I really enjoyed it because it reminded me a lot of how I used to feel when I would escape in the wilderness in the Adirondacks and spend like 10 or 12 hours alone, you know, hiking up and down the mountains and just, you know, being in that really, really quiet state. So I stuck with it and I added it to my morning routine. I'd meditate for 20 minutes after my morning run. At any rate, what it first started out as like, hey, this makes me feel peaceful. I began to have some really transformative experiences. 9 months, a year and a half into it. Probably the first thing hurricane that happened is I began to have this, or I did have this distinct separation of where I believed I was my thoughts to where suddenly I was like, oh, I'm not my thoughts. I'm watching my thoughts as if from a distance. And then when that happened, I could then take a look at those thoughts and say, well, if these thoughts aren't me, then who am I really? And are these thoughts really the kind of thoughts that I need to have? And I started to ask different kind of questions. And what I started to realize was like almost every thought that I had was not serving me. Right? It was all this program It was all programmed into me. And they were like, I did not believe half of what I was saying to myself. Like it wasn't ringing true to this new version of me that was emerging. That entire story that said I was meant to be in New York and get into finance and make a ton of money. Everything that all my peers were doing, everything that society said was super good, MBA, CPA. I looked at all that from that perspective on the meditation bench as just a story that it wasn't my story. So that was pretty profound for a 22-year-old. But then, of course, it created like a early midlife crisis in me because I was like, holy shit! I've invested a lot of time and energy to be here, and if that identity is a false identity, then who the hell am I really? So that led me to the path of like inquiry. So I started to ask those kind of questions. If I'm not that, then who am I? Who am I really? And what am I supposed to be doing? And so I sat and meditated with that, for another 6 to 9 months. And I started to get my meditations getting more and more deep, right? Where I would have these moments where I'd really completely drop off into, you can almost say just a timeless dimension, right? And every time I would come out of those moments, I would come with a kind of a sensation or a feeling that I was meant to be a warrior. But I didn't come back with saying, hey, you're not supposed to be a Navy SEAL. I just said, you're supposed to be a warrior. So I started saying, well, what kind of warrior? How am I supposed to be a warrior? Could I be a warrior as a CPA? I was like, I'm sure someone could, but I didn't feel like I could, And so while I was pondering this, how could I be a warrior? Once again, one night I'm walking home from work and in my little reverie, and I pass a Navy recruiting office, and there's a poster, facing out toward the street. And the top of the poster says, be someone special. And I didn't feel very special at the time, but I was like, that's appealing to me. I would love to be someone special. And the pictures it was Navy SEALs doing cool shit, right? Free falling out of an airplane. They had the little guys in the submarine. They had the sniper in the hide site. It said nothing about the Navy SEALs. It just said, be someone special, U.S. Navy. But right then and there, I knew that's how I was meant to be a warrior. And that was it. Whatever that was it. So long story short, went through the whole recruiting process. They tried to dissuade me. They said, don't do it. They tried to tell me I shouldn't be an officer, but I'm like, I'm going to have a freaking master's degree. They said I was too old. And I'm like, no way. And finally, and I had to go in as a civilian, right? Most officers, all officers, I should say, come from either Naval Academy or Reserve Officer Training Corps, which is associated with a major university. Well, I didn't have either of those. So there was an obscure program where they'll take 1 to 2 people a year, not every year, directly from the civilian world through officer candidate school if they're the right candidate. So I applied for that. And lo and behold, I got selected. I was one guy that year that got selected. So in 1989, November of 1989, I got my MBA, my CPA, and my first degree black belt all in the same month. And I left New York City, turned my back on everything, walked away from it all, and joined the Navy at 25 years old. So that was my unusual path to the Navy. So here I am in SEAL training, BUDS class. BUDS is Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training, 170. It's after OCS, so 4 months later. So March of 1990, 185 like hardcore guys, standing there lining up with me on that first day of training. And it took us a few weeks, right? And we were already down to like 90. And then we hit Hell Week, right? And Hell Week is 6 days nonstop training. And by this time, I had started to notice that my meditation had really brought me some skills that these other people didn't have, right? The instructors, as you can imagine, the Navy SEAL instructors are absolutely masterful at getting under your skin and creating this sense of absolute chaos and dread and constant confusion, like VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. They're trying to simulate what combat would be like, right? When you're completely out of control. And every time they did this, which was every day, I remember just having that same experience. Like they're saying these words.
Yeah, outside of that realm.
Yeah, but it's not hitting me, right? There's this big gap, and I get to choose. And so normally I would just sit there and breathe. And then I would be like, okay, what's the right course of action? What are they really asking for? And a lot of the times I could see they're really asking just to see how you're going to respond. And if I can respond as the calm, cool, collected guy who is turning to his team and saying, all right, guys, because we are organized in small teams in SEAL training, like 7 people, called a boat crew. So anytime the shit hit the fan, I would turn to my team. I said, guys, just pause, breathe, breathe. Take a nice couple deep breaths through your nose. I didn't know then, but that's an arousal control technique, right? Slow nostril breathing, like calms you down, gives you a little mental space. I said, let's figure this out together, right? They're trying to put wedges between us. They're trying to get us out of control. So let's know that we're in control. What's the minimal action that we need? Like if there's a crisis, let's get off. We call it now getting off the X. Let's get off the X. Let's figure out how to. And the best thing we can do is to move, like move forward, and then chunk it up. Like if they're asking us to do some insane thing, like row our boats around the entire island, well, we don't have to worry about the entire island just yet. All we got to do is get our boat, maybe a half a mile down, the ocean, and we'll set a target. Let's just go there. Let's just do that. Let's just do that the best we can. So it ended up being these like 4 really important skills, right, that I was working on that kind of evolved. And now I teach. The first one is that breath control, right? So just pausing and breathing, it resets your nervous system because you get jacked up, in any situation and you can't think. And your IQ gets cut in half when you go into fight or flight. And the way to reset that is nostril breathing, deep diaphragmatic nostril breathing, arousal control. So that was the first skill. So practicing arousal control every day. And that became a daily practice, even when I woke up, just deep diaphragmatic breathing. And I added a hold at the top and the bottom, and I call that box breathing. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. And it's like very calming for the nervous system. And it creates this like clear, spaciousness where you can make better decisions. And then the second skill was mental management, right? So it's like always making sure that you're not reacting, right, to the crisis, but you're actually creating that space through the breath and the pause, and then looking for any negative conditioning, any negative thoughts that are arising, like, holy shit, what's going on? I can't do this. And that's where you start to devolve into failure, right? Because negativity precedes failure all the time, right? It literally weakens your body and it sucks your motivation. So I would learn to interdict any type of negative thoughts, any negative conditioning, and redirect that to like some sort of positive internal dialogue, positive mantra, like I've got this, easy day, piece of cake. And then to maintain that kind of attitude. And so I had a maintenance mantra that always kept me positive and motivated. And it was, I'm feeling good, I'm looking good, I ought to be in Hollywood. I'm feeling good, I'm looking good, I ought to be in Hollywood, right? So I learned to like have this playing in the background all the time, this mantra just kept me, it actually made me laugh. And I taught this to my team, right? So these 2 skills right there are money. But the third skill was like for me, once I knew that I was meant to be a warrior and I was going to play that out, at least this version of my life as a Navy SEAL, like I knew what that looked like. I had a vision for what that looked like. I had a vision of me graduating SEAL training, of being a really successful SEAL officer. And so I taught my team to have that vision that we were going to be there together at graduation. Like we are going to get this boat crew together through all the trials and tribulations of SEAL training. And we talked about it. And so we had this vision that was powerful, that was always with us. So we never forgot like why we were there. A quick, pause. Well, and the last skill, but I'll tell you another story real quick. The last skill is just focusing. I already talked about it, just on one small thing at a time. So if you got to do this massive thing, don't think about the massive thing. Just chunk it down to like little bite-sized chunks and daisy chain those chunks together. So what that does is a it's easier to think about. You don't get overwhelmed, but B, because you're having these little victories, by the time you're 20, 30, 40% in, you've got so much momentum and so much positive energy because you just keep winning. Whereas if you take the totality of the whole thing and you try to bite that and eat that elephant all at once, then you never do it and you feel like you're losing. My first day of SEAL training, I had a guy I went to officer candidate school with named Bill, a friend of mine. This guy could run circles around me, PT like a madman. He was totally gung ho to be a Navy SEAL, right? First day, we're in our first beat down, several hours just getting crushed on the beach. And I remember the instructor. The instructor's name was Zinke, right? He's currently in Congress. This guy is massive, right? Like 6'7", former, D-back for Oregon State or something. And I remember him saying, and he was a first phase instructor, and he's like, class, hit the surf, right? And so I turn and run and start running toward the surf, and I'm looking for my friend Bill. And Bill had turned around and he was hightailing it up to the compound. And I knew what that meant, right? He's going to go ring the bell. So if you're going to quit, you have to go up and ring this bell. And so I start running after Bill because I'm going to drag his ass back into the ocean with me. And Zinke just steps in front of me. It's like, I'm running into a wall. Like, and he looks at me, he goes, Mark, this one's on him. Get back in the ocean. And I'm like, oh shit. So I turn around and run back in the ocean, and a moment later I'm hearing ding, 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 ding. Oh, there goes Bill. So I go back later on that night when we finally get off, I find Bill, right? And he's like packing the shit, tail between his legs. And I'm like, Bill, what the heck? Right? Like, you were gung-ho wanting to be Mr. Navy SEAL for several years now. What happened? And Bill looked at me, he said, Mark, in that moment, right, with all the chaos and all the fear and everything going on in my head, he goes, I couldn't remember why I wanted to be a SEAL. Right? He spent several years training to be there, but he did not have a vision, right, of him as a Navy SEAL. He was always wondering whether it was possible. It's probably the quickest way to fail at something really hard and important is to not have a real clear vision and to believe that you're worthy of doing it. So there's a lot more I could say, but I'll probably stop there. So my path to the SEALs was a little bit unique. I joined later. I was 25, 26. I turned 26 in SEAL training. But I really attribute most of my success to Nakamura and the meditation training. And it was, it was comprehensive because mixed with the martial art, it was mind, body, spirit. It was a process of like really kind of like bringing more out of me that I even knew was in there. I mean, it served me really well because sure enough, at the end of training and graduation, 185 of us started, only 19 of us finished, and I was the number one graduate, the honor man, and my entire boat crew made it with me, which is very rare if never happened before. It's kind of cool,
huh? I'm out of words for this one. I'm hardly out of words in general, but let's break some of the stuff down that you said. First of all, it's amazing that we're going to talk about the book Uncommon, and you ultimately just defined uncommon, already,
pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much your whole life has been uncommon. And those are traits that many people need to somehow develop. And it looks like it's a fact, I think, I'm not even exaggerating when I say this, that the people that make it in this world are pretty uncommon. And by the way, this is not taking away from anybody else, but to lead, to be highlighted in this world somehow, you're not going to be doing exactly what the 99% of people do. It's just unique. And there's different things. There's almost like a recipe for this. You kind of almost stumble into these things, but I don't believe in coincidence. I think everything that lined up to where you are today was by design. The fact that you saw yourself as a warrior and you had the vision, and your friend Bill did not have that. Yes, he wanted to be a SEAL, but he didn't know why. You knew what you wanted to do at any given moment in your life, although there was a point where you were doing the school, but you were doing the routine. Yeah. See, a lot of us do the routine, and many of us do everything as part of what we're told until we discover it's not really ourselves. And I've had so many discussions about, that is a fact, where people, they get to a point in their lives like, wait a minute, this is not it. This is not what I'm meant to be. Now you've touched on a couple of powerful things that are shared by the best of the best of the best in this world. And, a lot of the folks that again, make it and highlight themselves over the masses, there's meditation involved in there. There's definitely a warrior spirit. There is, like you said, the balance between mind, body, and spirit. And there is also the fact of martial arts. And believe it or not, I mean, I am not a Navy SEAL, but I've been in martial arts for many years.
Good. Right on.
So since the age of 9, so I can relate to some of the experiences you've had. And yes, I was in karate. That was 20 years of karate doshodokan.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
Japanese, traditional, and so I can relate to those meditations and stuff. Myself, and someone who does not understand that, maybe like, what is this? These guys talking about? But there is a level, and by the way, I've had several discussions, with top success people in the world, and meditation is part of their, kind of like routine. It's part of their life.
Right.
You cannot possibly talk to someone who is, doing achievements in their life and making an impact that doesn't use some level of meditation. Doesn't matter what level. I mean, there's different types, but it is, as you said, where you're kind of getting in touch with your higher power, your energy.
Right.
And I love that visual that you gave about, like, you are being out of your own self, seeing things with a clarity that most people may not have. Because you're right,
Right.
we get busy with our thoughts. But if you can highlight yourself and remove yourself and kind of almost oversee your
Right.
true, vision and your aura and all the stuff. By the way, this is not, voodoo stuff or woo woo stuff. It's
No,
real. For those
it's
people
real.
that like,
Yeah.
this, like, these guys sounds like they're talking some voodoo business. It's not. It's real. Anyone that takes the moment to start meditating and really focusing, you will get a higher level of understanding of things. The idea that you had a vision of where you want to be, and the warrior spirit. By the way, the reason you went to karate is you had the warrior spirit. I mean,
That's right.
my sons, they used to
That's
say,
it.
like, I have a warrior spirit, because you're designed to be a fighter, and a
Right.
good fighter doesn't really fight, but you have the ability to do it. It's in you. There's
Right.
some of that stuff that is, I don't know how it happens, but it's happening. And there are people that have that personality and that persona, that aura, and you had that, and you discovered it, and it opened up your eyes, and you can. And that's the other thing, like, you were a white belt, yet you kind of were mesmerized with the black belts, and you see, you didn't
Right.
stop. You could have said, like, oh, this is not for me, I'll walk back. You
That's
asked.
right.
That's the other thing, like, see, those are all uncommon traits. The fact that you've done all these little things, I mean, being a CPA, MBA, and all this stuff at the same time, and get into the stuff and doing your work, that's in itself, it's a lot. And a lot of people may, like, they don't want to do more, they want to do less. And again, one
Right.
of the traits of success is that people do more. In general,
Right.
they're busy, and they're doing a lot of things. And the more you do, the more you absorb energy, the more you absorb information, the more you get, busier in your mind, the more you
Right.
know things, the more your life becomes different. And somehow things line up. So the idea, I mean, you walked in, you saw that poster, I mean, I kind of, when you said martial arts, and I figured it's going to happen where you're going to stumble in the recruiting place, and you did. But you're right. Those posters, I mean, they
Right.
do work. I mean, you look at some of the
They do
commercials,
work.
they're very
Yeah.
strong.
Oh, the Marine Corps. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
they're the only ones meeting their recruiting goals. Everyone else is down by 40% because of what's going on in this culture, right? Or people are just too unhealthy and too fat, right? They're not meeting the requirements. So the Army, Navy, and Air Force are, like, unfortunately, like, really loosening the requirements, right? But the Marine Corps is like, they meet it every single year because of their, just the mystique, right? And the allure that they kind of put on. Um, it's incredible, right? You know what the Marines mean, and they tap into that kind of warrior ethos and that warrior spirit. And there's not a young kid around who doesn't get inspired by that. So they're genius.
Well, they are, but again, I have to say, like, all when you watch a commercial, like, any military branch, a commercial. I mean, they're pretty, attractive. Like, you want
Yeah,
to be. Well, I mean, whether it's your career path, and that you have this great responsibility in a person and stuff, it just changes. Now, of course, you went to the probably one of the highest level, units in the world. I mean, when you Navy SEAL is known to be, like, I mean, you have the Rangers in
right,
one, so you have different, branches of special ops in different, teams or different branches. Navy SEALs is known to be like the go-to, guys for special ops and tough situations. And again, like you said, in the 80s, that wasn't the case. Now we have plenty of movies, we have real events, we have real, SEALs out there talking on podcasts and shows and
right,
movies, even,
right,
and even doing a lot of the work, in the executive level, stuff.
right, right.
So it's amazing how that changed today. And again, thanks to you and your team and your crew. I guess that's out there. A lot of them, I'm sure you're friends with. There's that. But a lot of the traits that you've talked to us about just now is just defining the idea that you have to be different, think different, behave different. And certainly, I love what you wanted to do, with Bill. And
Right.
this guy said, listen, it's on him now because you know what?
Right.
It's either but you're right, he couldn't have changed his mind at that point. And what you
Not at
said,
that point. Right.
one thing you said that is powerful is the idea that when you are in a flight or fight mode or fight or flight mode, you're not able to think. Most of us, if we get too excited and anxious, you're going to lose your cool and you're not going to know. One thing in martial arts
That's
that
right.
you learn is that's not the case. You're always going to be calm in any situations. And so that's also a plus that you have that many people may not have. And you said you're
Right.
there. These guys are drilling you now. Again, not I'm not even close to your level, but an experience similar to yours, where when I went to this particular university overseas, and they had this week of initiation week, they call it, and all the higher the seniors come into you and in your face and do all the stuff and order you around. It's like that it's mandated. You have to get through this whole thing of initiation. And it's like, if you fail, you kind of like, worse kind of concept. But if you stand to them, and without losing your cool, that's really, and there's a contest at the end. You get crowned if you actually make it. And actually, I was the crowned, guy
That's cool. Good
for,
job.
for that week. Well, again, it's a simple example, but not close to where you are. But the idea is similar, where you stand to things and you don't let people phase you when they come in your face. That actually
Right.
makes a big difference in how people behave and react. I mean,
Right.
if you get into a situation in any day, by the way, you look very, intimidating. If you're standing for someone, I don't think someone would just want to come. They'll have to be literally not happy about their money, their well being. But that's another story. But the
That's
fact
another
is,
story.
but you know what I mean. But when someone wants to come to a situation in front of you, you're into a situation, you're gonna be a lot more comfortable dealing with it without even the stress. Knowing what you know and your training and your background is one thing, but also just the fact that you can control the situation. I'm pretty sure if you get
Right.
into scenario in a bar, in the street, whatever, you're not the ones going to initiate and instigate and do all stuff. You'll be the one to diffuse, and
That's right.
de-escalate quickly. However, you can certainly turn things,
You can
to
take
your
care of
advantage.
business. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's a level that is different. Now, the stuff that you talked about, we're talking more like military training, martial arts, but this is real live business applications. Everything you said
Right.
is really that. Being having a vision, when you start a business, entrepreneurs, for example, right? They start a business, but sometimes they don't have, as you said, that vision. Therefore, there is nothing. They don't see where they are. I mean, you have to have, where you're going to be in 5 years, or 6 years, whatever it takes. But you see yourself, you see those stuff, those successes, and those, like, you see the podium, you see yourself in a ranking, level, whatever the case may be. The idea of breaking it down to little, achievements, as opposed to
Right.
looking at the whole thing and you want to hit the whole pie. I mean, you can hit the whole pie, but in small pieces. You're never going to be able
Hmm.
to eat the whole pie to, one slice, one bite, right? Same concept. I mean, these are like basic elements you think, but people
Right.
go head on with projects, and they just basically get lost in the realm of what that project is, and they get overwhelmed quickly and they're done. I mean, they just can't keep up. I mean, just like a marathon, right? You don't sprint it, otherwise you'd be dead. I mean, we just had the New York Marathon a couple of days ago. If you run that thing, you want to make it, you're going to take it slow to make it there, and you will be able to conquer it.
Yeah.
Same thing in,
Right.
in business. I mean, I used to get this question all the time. Like, we had so many things going on, even in my world, like my personal, world, the business is this, I'm doing consulting, doing this, that. People's like, how can you do all this stuff? Because I don't take it as one big thing. Everything is
Right.
a project. Everything gets, broken down to a particular day or time of the day. And, you tackle everything on time. When there is a big thing, I don't go crazy about like thinking the whole picture. Okay, so here's the big plan, but here's the first step by step, little by little. And we get, one thing at a time, and
That's
you'll
right.
get there.
That's right.
And that it's like, one small step, right? And then the
That's
rest
right.
is history. People sometimes they get overwhelmed with the magnitude of the project, and they're like, "Oh, this is too big." Nothing is too big. I mean, as a matter of fact, if you dream, just dream as big as you want. Scare yourself, but know how
Right.
to get to your dream and achieve it. So thank you for really, the analogies of all the stuff that you've talked to is real applicable in life. And again,
For
the
sure.
word, the,
Yeah.
the book, the one that you've just published, Uncommon, is really a trade that if anyone, and by the way, there's a lot of talk and articles and discussions and studies about this. You need to be able to highlight yourself, whether it's your look, whether you feel. You don't have to be subjected to what everybody else is doing. You're not everybody else, and that's a
No,
big
that's common. That's common, right? The whole
exactly.
point about uncommon is and by the way, the subtitle is simple principles for an extraordinary life, because as you just pointed out, these are simple, but simple is not easy. Hmm? And we used to say that in sales. We want to get the simplicity, but simplicity is not easy because it requires discipline. And so I break the book down into these 5 sections, and I call them the 5 mountains. And this is a like another analogy. In the SEALs, we say, okay, we earned something after graduation called the Navy SEAL Trident, right? It's the gold pin that most people don't know what it is, but people that know it, like they're like, whoa, that's a Navy SEAL. And it's got an eagle on it, and it's got a flintlock pistol, and it's got a King Neptune's trident. And the eagle actually the whole thing was designed by a Navy SEAL a long time ago, and the eagle was ripped off from the Budweiser can. So we actually call it the Budweiser. It makes sense, right? Because beer and Navy SEALs go well together, right? At any rate, so that's called that whole thing we call the Trident or the Budweiser. One of our ethos is in the SEALs, but you got to earn your Trident every day, right? You can't rely on yesterday's accomplishments. When we first ran into the Navy SEAL training compound as an ensign, and I remember very first day, we're jogging in there, we're going to get our asses handed to us. This is before Bill quit. There's a big sign up there that says the only easy day was yesterday. The only easy day was yesterday. So it's kind of the same thing. So earn your Trident every day. Today's the day. Today's your day, not yesterday. Excuse me, and not tomorrow. I picked up a little cold last weekend.
Sorry about that. Well, talk about
It's okay.
a mind game. I mean, that's a powerful thing. I mean, here you are doing this crazy training, and you look at
Yeah.
that sign. That would beat anyone that is weak minded. I mean, just looking at that, it's like,
Yeah, like,
oops.
wait a minute, because I did a lot of work to get here. Doesn't that count for anything? Nope. Doesn't matter. Today is your day. So what are you going to do? You got to put out. You got to earn that Trident. So I carry that, of course, into my life after the SEALs, and I started training other Navy SEALs, and I started a program called SEAL Fit to train. I wanted to train other SEALs how I did what I did, and so I taught them those skills that we talked about earlier. But I also taught them a developmental model. So, okay, we got to earn our Trident every day, and in order to tap into your fullest potential, you can't just work out, right? And that's what they were doing. They're just working out harder and harder and harder. And I said, first of all, you're going to injure yourself. So you need to balance the hard and the soft, the yin and the yang. And you know this from the martial arts, right? There's hardcore training, and then you sit and meditate and stretch, right? And there's downtime. You got to take them both. It doesn't have to be equal time, because the hard is stretched out in linear time and space, whereas the soft is like you want to go in, like inward, and tap into that nonlinear field of just pure potential, where all creativity comes from, spontaneous knowingness, insight, and intuition. And so I taught them that through this juxtaposition of hard and soft. We go out and have the hardcore freaking 2.5 hour bone breaking workout, and then I would take them into the yoga room, and we would breathe and meditate and stretch. I taught them yoga, but I learned pretty early that I couldn't use any yoga terms. So I called it taking the foo out of the kung fu. I would just strip all the fancy, kind of mystical terminology. And that's why I called it box breathing. I didn't call it pranayama. Um, and so over the course of 30 days, I would bring them in for 30 days. They would live with me. I'd have like 12, 15 guys. And think of it like a Shaolin monastery for special operators. We train, you would love it, Hurricane, you would have loved it. We trained from, like 5 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. The graduation ceremony was 50 hours of nonstop training, no sleep. And that was to simulate Hell Week. And it was this constant like baking into them that they've had this multidimensional nature, right? And to bring it all back together so they can really understand what it meant to feel intuition, and to really like be able to be quiet, to allow thinking to happen, as opposed to like analytical and try to solve every problem with their left brain. And these guys went when they went to SEAL training, 90% of them succeeded. Contrast that with the 90% fail rate for everybody else. So the SEALs, it took a while, but when these guys started cycling back in to be instructors, they brought basically the unbeatable mind principles into SEAL training now. And so now the SEALs teach these skills, which is great for our nation, right? They certainly didn't teach them when I was there. I was just like, you know, I was trial and error, right? So, anyways, the book Uncommon is really came out of all that work because ultimately what I saw was that in order to tap our fullest potential as humans, first of all, we got to do the work, like you said. You got to take responsibility for your own evolution. You can't expect anyone else to do it for you. So they're right there. You know, you just a whole swath of civilization is disqualified because they just don't understand that in order to really be unique and to achieve these lofty dreams that you have, you got to do the work. And the work shows up every day from the moment you open your eyes until the moment you close them. And so that's number one. And number two is there is a certain way to do the work, right? We learned this through the martial arts. It's a developmental path. Yoga is a developmental path. Martial arts is a development path. Where do we have a development path in the Eastern or in the Western world? We don't. We don't. We have sports, we have school, and then you're kind of like left to the wind. So I wanted to bring a developmental path as I had experienced it or understood it that from Nakamura with Seido, which is an offshoot of Shotokan, by the way. Um, and he had a very unique approach, right? He's like there was hard physical training, and then there was mental training, and then there was because it was a team sport and we were all kind of a team. There was emotional development, and because we used to spend time at Zen Mountain Monastery in nature, meditating for days at a time, there was a lot of intuition and kind of spirituality. And so when I built the program for the SEALs, I said, okay, this is multidimensional, and I called it the five mountains. Physical, we're going to do physical training, we're going to do mental training, we're going to do emotional training, we're going to do intuitive training, and we're going to do spiritual training. And we're going to bring it all together in this integrated format so that even our workouts are going to have all those five components in them, right? So our workouts, we would box breathe before a workout, we would visualize the workout, we would visualize ourselves succeeding, right? We would pause during the workout and like listen within, right? And just like really kind of tap into our intuition. I can't tell you how many times like we're like, oh man, there's something a little off, right? I got to change something here, right? Because we're going too hard, or maybe I need to pick it up because the guys are losing motivation. And so we bring this whole multidimensional nature, physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, spiritual nature into how we trained and into these little practices, morning ritual, evening ritual, spot drills. And the results are just extraordinary. So that's what this book is about. Each chapter, each section is broken into one of those five domains. And it really teaches you how to like do this multidimensional integrated development so that you can take responsibility for your own evolution and you can accelerate your growth rapidly to access more awareness, more greater perspective, more compassion, more intuition, more creativity. And I want to teach this to the world because, you know, like you said, the applicability goes far beyond just special operations warriors. Like it's, especially now in this world, like everyone needs to be a warrior these days, right? It's a serious VUCA storm out there.
It is crazy. There's a hurricane out there, and it ain't me.
Yeah,
but but
right.
but 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 so a couple of things. I love what you touch on the concept of simple but not easy.
Yeah,
It's oftentimes looked at as the same, but it's not. I mean, things can be difficult, but we can simplify things. One
right,
thing is that you talked about earlier that I wanted to just go back quickly to is the idea that you said that the whole team that you were in charge of at the time in your training, you all made it. And so
right,
so there is something about that to be told, because again, if you work as a team, you succeed as a team.
right,
And I think that part of it is also part of the training that you've had in the martial arts, because again, in martial arts, you're part of a crew, you're part of a team, you're part of a family. There's all these things that we learn. I mean, martial arts by default is the arts of military. I mean, that's kind of like what they are
Right.
in their roots. So there's a lot of stuff. But you're right. It's not just about physical intense training, because that's part of it. And in today's fitness world, I mean, fitness is seen as like heavy duty training, heavy, I don't know, boot camp concept, you name it, a lot of weights, a lot of stuff. That's great. But there's different components. As you said, you're not only training the physical, you're training the mind, you're training the spiritual aspect of it, you're doing the stretching, you do all this stuff. In martial arts, we do all combination of it. You start with stretching, you start with, meditation before you even get into the practice of anything. Then you do all your, warm-ups and things, and then you get into the techniques and the practical things. And those are things that typically we lose in the real world, because not everybody's applying those concepts. And
Right.
your book is basically breaking it down, like, to be uncommon, this is what needs to be done, these are the areas that we need to actually work on. And as you said, I love what you said, that you wanted to bring this to the world because there is a need for it. And what you just said is so true. Maybe we don't have to be warriors to go and fight, although you never know what happens
That's
in
right.
this world.
You
You
can
always
be a
have to be
warrior
ready.
in many different ways, you know?
Exactly, but being a warrior in spirit is you're always out there. You're outgoing, you're ready.
Right.
You're in business a warrior. You're making things happen. You're changing the world. You're innovative. You're making a difference. You're changing things about how we see
Right.
and how
You're
we do
not a
things.
sheep and you're not a victim, right?
I
You're
love it.
taking charge, right? And
Woo!
you're making things happen and you're there to help other people. You're in service, right? I think all warriors are in service. Like for me, I was in service to my mission, the team and my mission. But when it came to the real shit, it was my team, right? And so we had enough love to be willing to die for our teammates, and that's rare, right? That's rare, and I'm not asking everyone to be able to access that kind of love for your teammates. But I know most parents would be like, yeah, I would do that. I would lay down my life to save my kid if they were in trouble. Or, entrepreneurs would go to the line to save their business, right? When there's a crisis. And we saw that during COVID, and not everybody made it. Obviously, a lot of people got their ass handed to them. We got crushed too, but we're making a comeback. That's what I'm saying. Entrepreneurs don't quit. You're a warrior, right? You just got to be.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's the concept of warrior is just a lot more than what we want it to be, or at least we know it to be. It's really, as you said, it's being accountable, being always in action, in charge,
Right,
and really, it's not about you. It's about really saving the day, saving others. I mean,
right,
again, a warrior is always willing to sacrifice their life, right? Well, that's the thing. We do it for different reasons, but there's nothing higher than doing it for helping others, right? And
right.
that's really what it is. I mean, it's historic, it doesn't matter, we that's really what it is, and it makes a big difference. And uh, you know I have to say this: you are a leader by default. I mean, it's just, it was always in you. It's something that was built in you somehow. And that's the thing, like, there's this discussion about leadership. Are you a leader by
Right.
design, or are you a leader by acquisition? you know
Right.
I just
Or
want
by
you to,
circumstance.
by circumstance. I mean, again, well, the ones that by circumstance, sometimes they're not really good leaders. They just get a
True.
title in leadership, but they wind up just bossing people around and stuff. But a true leader is, as you said, there's a spiritual piece to it. There's a
Right.
vision. There is a belief that you are, in charge. You're accountable for every single outcome that will affect, whoever you are working with. And that's a
Right.
big difference. Can you just maybe expand a little bit from your perspective on leadership, just to bring it out to people? Because, I
Yeah.
mean, we have you here. I mean, you have the highest, I mean, you commanded, some of the top teams in the world, and so what does it take to be a true leader, whether in military or in business? I mean,
Sure. Well, obviously, my view of this has evolved as I have, but what I see, especially for today, is that the role of a leader is to bring out the best in their team. And in order to do that, they have to have abject humility, right? And so this is what I saw in Nakamura when I walked in there. Like what I saw was a grandmaster with hundreds of thousands of students, right? He didn't need anybody. And yet he cared about everybody. And it wasn't about him, right? So every action he took was in service I remember the reason he started Sado. He was actually the lineage from Shotokan. Like there's Shotokan, then there was something called Kyokunsai, right? Kyokunsai was started by Masayama, and it was I think an offshoot of Shotokan. And Masayama was badass, and he was famous for cutting the horn off of a charging bull with his hand, right? So he had developed these kind of hardcore powers that you can develop as a martial artist or as a yogi. That if you train doing something for 30, 40 years, you can do things that most people think are impossible. In fact, I saw Nakamura display something similar in Madison Square Garden demonstration, right? All sorts of karate stuff going on. His thing was he walks out and there's these big blocks of ice stacked on each other, like 5 blocks of ice with like a little wooden peg, between them. And he stands before this in a meditative stance, right? You got to remember, the guy's only 5'4" or 5. And he's just standing there. And then all of a sudden, like you couldn't even see him move. He moved so fast, but he just goes like this. And he smacks his forehead on the ice. And all 5 blocks just go crumble. And he just walks away. that's a city. That's a special power, right?
It's amazing.
So yeah, but again, it wasn't to prove that he was anything special. Because what he did walk away to was sign autographs for little kids. He was so humble. Excuse me. I hope we can edit that out.
Get it out.
So humility and humor, right, go hand in hand, right? The same root word, just like human. It means close to the earth, and it means like real. So a great leader is someone who has really cultivated like true humility, not false humility. False humility is like toxic positivity, right? Bullshit. And you can feel it a million miles away. True humility is when I call it staring down the wall. It's when you've looked at your fears and your biases and your traumas that you wear on your sleeve, but you're completely ignorant of them. And you do the work, right? You do the work. You're willing to be called out. You're willing to be the one that's not right all the time. So you just give up all the isms, perfectionism, your judgmentalism, righteousness, and you show up with an attitude of humility and humor. And they're like, okay, team, like, here we go. It's another day. What's the world going to bring us today? What kind of great, hey, what adventures and challenges?
We got a guest.
This is the real star.
Oh, listen, beautiful.
Isn't she beautiful? Yeah, she's still a puppy. Yeah, so that I think, my last book was called Staring Down the Wolf, and that was the whole thing. Is like you got to stare down your fears, and you got to be authentic, and you got to show up just in total service to your team. And if you can do that, it doesn't matter if you don't have the greatest strategy, because your team will come up with the greatest strategy. And it doesn't matter, if you're not the expert, because the team will become the expert. Right? And the power of the team is going to be so much greater than any one expertise on the team. To me, this is the fundamentally most important skill for leaders in this day and age. And that type of skill is all found through inner work, the type that we've been talking about today. Right? You're not going to go to some ropes course. You're not going to go to some leadership where you're going to learn some new communication fancy skill, right? Or, how to do agile leadership. This is all found in cultivating stillness and silence and really like staring yourself in the face, like we do with meditation, and asking those dangerous questions like, who am I really? And how am I meant to serve? And how can I be better? How can I be uncommon? Right? The answers you get in stillness are never the ones you're going to get if you're in your rational mind, right? In your ego mind.
I'm listening to you, and I want to just throw this to our audiences right now, is that what you said is so profound, but it is real and it's a fact. And by the way, when we talked about uncommon as being your highlighted from the 99% of people, the key here is that everyone can be uncommon. And that's the thing. Like, it's not like it's for a certain elite group. You know,
No, no, it's everyone's birthright, but you just got to believe it, right?
well, you got to discover it, and you cannot
Got to
do that
discover it.
without, as you said, staring the wall, asking the tough questions. I think the problem that we have as humans is that it is when you start asking the real questions, as you said, who am I, what I'm doing, what is my purpose, and so on and so forth. You start facing realities that you might not want the because it comes with a burden, accountability, work. As you said, you got to do the work, and most people don't want to do extra. They might be comfortable. The comfort zone is something that we hear all the time, and sometimes if you want to get to the uncommon, you have to get ready to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, you know,
That's right.
and it's not always that simple. I think that's the issue. So whatever we say here is not that people are superior than others. We all have the ability to highlight ourselves, and we see this in tragedies, and we see them in disasters where people kind of like all of a sudden become
Yeah,
heroes, right? Because they have what it takes, but they develop that, that person comes out of them. There's something in them that was triggered, but not everybody triggers that. Your
right,
books could be, and your work is really helping people to maybe highlight and extract that from people, from
right.
themselves. Now, I
Yeah,
think
that's
we
right.
we we gotta do this for ourselves, folks. If you're watching or listening, ask the questions as to who you are, as to what is your purpose. Maybe you're not doing the right thing, and many people discovered that at a later time. You said you had a
That's right.
early mid crisis, life crisis. Some people have that way late in the game, but it's never
I
too
know,
late.
but it's
But it's never
never
too
too
late.
late. At the same time, if you're in your 20s or 30s, like, why wait, right? Why wait for the breakdown? You can figure this out by going within. And if you're, in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, and you're thinking, well, maybe I've missed the boat. No, like, today is your day. The only easy day was yesterday, right? So forget about the past. The point is, what are you going to do about the future? And you can create the future that you want, regardless of your age. When you uncover that clarity around your purpose and what your real big thing is, your one thing mission, I call it, man, you got all the motivation in the world. Like, you can't fail, right? Because you are really clear that that's the reason you're here and that's what you're meant to do. And back to you, I love what you said. We say that all the time. You got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. But the interesting thing is, when you begin to do that, like, you find something that's uncomfortable for you and you just kind of edge toward it, right? You move toward it and you sniff around it and you get a little bit of a taste of it. And suddenly the discomfort starts to go away and then it becomes fun, right? And playful. And then you get to look at the next uncomfortable thing. And you just keep doing this until, like, it's very little that makes you uncomfortable. And that's what makes you uncommon.
Well, thank you, Mark. Well, one thing that you also highlight that I would like to just to kind of push up a little bit here on the discussion is the idea of, you said a few times, and it is an important piece that we want people to really hone in and take it, to the bank. The idea of yesterday is gone, and the work that you've done yesterday, good or bad, whatever it is, it's gone. Your best example, you did your best, you were killing yourselves, and then when the first day, the first daylight comes in, it's like, forget yesterday. When we got to put you to hell
Right.
again, and beyond. Well, that's the same common thing. A lot of people are so disappointed and so tired because they still live in the past.
Right.
They are not, every new day that we have is a new chapter. It's a plain page. As a lot of times you hear this. It's an open book. It's your book. You write the
That's
new
right.
page. But yesterday
Right.
is gone. What the unfortunate case is that people are like dwelling on like all the wrongs and even the achievements. Like sometimes we live in our achievements in the past. Well, that's the past. You
That's right.
achieved it great. Can you keep up with the achievements on a day-to-day basis? And you know what? Why look in the back where you can't do anything about it? Maybe you learned a few things, but you have today that is a fresh day, and you have plenty of time ahead of you. Now we don't know how long we live, but as long as you live, you're going to have opportunities to make a
That's
difference.
right.
Today is a good
Right.
day to begin, to start. So again, these are all things that sometimes we just need to kind of reset ourselves to tune in to really in a better way. Because again, the past is history. Can't do anything. You might have learned a few things. Today is a brand new day. Let's work. And by the way, in the business world, I mean, my career has been in sales and the insurance space. And one of the things that we talk about all the time is like, you're only as good as your numbers today, not yesterday. Yesterday's gone.
That's
So
right.
today is the day. Now it sounds, brutal, but in sales, that's what it is. You can do all, listen, I've achieved quite a few things, but it doesn't matter what you did. If you're not delivering today, you're just not delivering. Nobody's caring about what you've done in your, golden, era. the golden era has got to continue every day that you're operational, and sometimes that may not be the case. So you have to be also aware of situational stuff that you can manage yourself. Don't stress out.
Right.
You got to figure out a way. Again, take a deep breath, box breathing. Concentrate,
Yeah.
remove yourself from stuff, break it down into chunks. And I love what you said. Sniff around your comfort stuff. It's not comfortable. Let's see what I can do. Poke in a little bit and see what's up.
Right.
Again,
Right.
I mean, if it's like working out, right? It's hard in the first day you go to the gym, you know.
Right.
As you put more time and more effort, martial arts. When you start, I mean, it's like, oh my God, what is this? What I got someone else signed up for?
Yeah.
You get a 2 3 years in, like this is like a breeze. You look at a white belt, like,
Yeah.
hey, you're a
It's
new
like
challenge.
getting the Elon Musk rocket. It's like a lot of energy to get it up, but once it's out of the atmosphere, it just
Agree.
floats.
Yeah.
When a quick story. After Mr. Nakamura's Zen classes, he used to have a little talk. And I remember as clear as day because he used a little chalkboard with a white chalk, and squeaky, and he would write the kanji characters, and then underneath he would write what it meant in English. And one day, the kanji characters in the English, it spelled out one day, one lifetime, one day, one lifetime. And then he would talk about the concept. And that really stuck with me because it relates to what we're saying. And it was kind of like two angles to this. One is, as a warrior, and this applies to everybody, it's not just a warrior, but like you don't know if you're going to make it to tomorrow. It's not 100%, right? There's a lot of dangerous things we do, even in training, and it could be your last day. So just treat this day with the utmost care and respect. I don't mean being timid. I mean, like, you just be really present. Back to your point, don't worry about what happened yesterday. Don't put yourself too far in the future. Just radically focus on what you're doing and just do it with most and attention to detail and awareness and presence that you possibly can, just to suck the nectar out of this day, because it might be your last and you want it to be a good one. And then the other kind of angle is that today is all we've got. Again, yesterday's gone, tomorrow hasn't happened, right? And so we want to like really understand that today is where the action happens. Today is where the work is done. I'm not talking about you might not make it. Like, set that aside. Yeah, let's assume you're going to make it for another 30 years, but the work is done today. And then tomorrow the work will be done today. And then the next day the work will be done today. And so today is a lifetime of opportunity because it'll affect the rest of your life.
Days every day.
Every day affects the rest of your
Today.
life. Right?
It's amazing, isn't it? Well, like again, it's like when you hear these things, right? It's like you get an aha moment. Like, how did I not think
Yeah,
about it this way? Again,
I
because
know.
we spend most of our times not reflecting on things and questioning things. But once you
Right.
start, it becomes so clear. I mean, it's crystal clear to all of us now. If you're watching or listening, this is not rocket science we're talking about. I mean, although we talked about rockets going up there, but the
We
fact
did,
of the
yeah.
matter, we talked about the outcome, but not what it took to actually get those rockets up. But the fact is, nothing is easy. But I love what you said. It's today. Maximize the opportunities. Again, one day it's like for every success we have to till to this moment that we are on this particular show, the successes and achievements that have happened in this world happen with someone in one day, in 1 minute,
That's
in
right.
a day. And whatever that is, whatever it was, I don't care if it's gravity discovery or the flight or the light or the phone or the computer or the technology, whatever it is that we have that we use today, someone worked day to day, day after day, and in one day it happened.
Yeah,
After
it
years,
was created. That's right.
yeah, it got done in one day. Not, of course the work was done, but it every day they woke up, they were at work trying to figure this out until it happened. And like
Right.
we did it. And that's exactly what we can all do. Any one of us can have that same moment. Today is the day I'm going to do something. Now, the day ends, nothing happened. Well, there is a few things that happened. You've learned a few things not to do and a few things that you can do better. Guess what?
That's
You
right.
apply that concept the next day, and voila, you're good again. And you go at it. I mean, again, when you train, you've done martial arts, right? So you know that, for example, people make fun of katas, right? Like, what the hell are those katas? it's really a practical way to practice your movements and stuff. When we actually put them into real action, they work. They're not going to be as
Right.
stiff as you see them in
Right.
demonstrations, but when you apply them with real movements, with real, and defend yourself, they apply. Actually, there's a real application to them. When you talk to, for example, today BJJ folks, right? They they work hard for those moves to actually be so fluid and be able to move
Yep.
them. If you watch a BJJ move instantly and you never done BJJ and you want to try the move, it's not going to look as fluid as when it's
Not going to look
from an
like that. No,
example. I mean,
not at
listen,
all.
we used to have this joke, like, the most dangerous martial artists are the white belts, not the black belt, because
That's right.
if you get in a technique with a white belt, not that because they don't know, they use brute force to apply the technique, not the technique and the format to actually make it work. As you practice more, it becomes easier, right? So you can move quicker and you do it better, and it looks
Right.
flawless, it looks fluid. But that's all there is. So it takes practice, to make it perfect. And that's exactly about life. We don't. I mean, that's where the old saying about wisdom, right? Wisdom comes with time. You can't be wise when you're just born. I mean, you
That's
haven't
right.
learned enough. I mean, you might have some wisdom in you, but you have to.
Wisdom is earned, not learned.
I love it. See, that's
Yeah.
a that we gotta have to margin, put a trademark on that one, something, if it hasn't been.
Straight.
All right. Well,
That's awesome.
listen. Well, I mean, we can talk for hours here. I mean, you just,
Yeah.
you got so much to offer to our audiences today. Now, you actually written 6 books. You mentioned 2. If you name the other books, and also where can they, get access to them,
Sure. Yeah.
and
Well,
how
they're
can
all on
people work with you?
Amazon.
Okay.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Uncommon, right? That's when we're talking about staring down the wolf, like my wolf dog here. That's my book about like really developing humility and leadership and bringing out the best in your teams. My book Unbeatable Mind is my training philosophy. It's the whole philosophy of the 5 mountains, and in a way, Uncommon is really like a deep dive on the 5 mountains, but I introduce a lot more in that. Um, the Way of the Seal is put out by Reader's Digest. That is kind of like if you want to be a badass and learn to lead like a Navy SEAL, but with these principles baked in, kind of what I was teaching the Navy SEALs. That's what that book is about. And then I've got 2 training books. One is called Kokoro Yoga, which is a integrated movement program predominantly for men. It's the yoga I was teaching to SEALs. I had to like do it a little bit differently than what you find at like core power yoga or some stretchy bendy thing, because a lot of guys weren't attracted to that. And so, but yoga is for everybody, and it's almost an essential practice when some sort of integrated movement where you integrate breath, movement, spine, somatic, kind of embodiment. So powerful for your growth. And then 8 weeks to SEAL Fit is my hard hitting uh, physical training guide for developing physical and mental toughness. And then as far as training with me, the SEAL Fit program, we run these intense crucibles. We have 6, 12, 24, and 50 hours. We run those once. Next year, it's just once, right? So they're intense programs, and we have people come from all over the world. And you can learn more at sealfit.com. Unbeatablemind.com is where most of my integrated development, vertical development training is found. So we have a good 30-day program there, and a longer program in a community, and it's really cool, very effective. And if anybody wants to reach out to me for speaking or for coaching, my website, markdevine.com, has information, and they can reach me through my assistant at info@markdevine.com. Spelled DIVINE.
And it's open to everybody, pretty much. Doesn't matter.
Everybody, yeah,
Oh.
absolutely. Now, SEAL Fit, you got to be ready for that. That's you don't just jump into that. But Unbeatable Mind, we do emphasize physical health and physical training, but it's really kind of your own choice, and we meet people where they're at.
Now, SEALFIT is like pretty much boot camp for the elite of the elite in
That's right. It's
endurance.
it's elite level training.
All right. Well, it's not for the faint of heart, as they said. This is the stuff that you really gotta practice for. It's like, being ready for. But again, going through the challenge. It's like, in the business world, I got TEDx, right? I got to talk. Well, in this case, I just graduated SEALFIT, training. That's
Yeah.
like,
Everything's easy after that.
Exactly. Well, this is true. I mean, you probably experienced this before. I mean, obviously through the SEALs and even before. So in martial arts, we used to do these camp trainings for 3 days, whatever, in the woods
Right.
and in the camp. You come out of those trainings, you're like, you know, bring it on, baby.
Yeah,
It's all good because it's so intense that you're ready. You've been
that's right.
conditioned to be able to face the world with no heart. I mean, it's easy for you to be. You feel stronger. You feel like powerful. Your mind is stronger. Everything is there, and you really can endure. And that's exactly what it
Right.
is. So your training is definitely going to be awesome experience for people. So again, folks, you can learn from the mind, the body, the spirit, and you build a strength, stamina, whatever, and also leadership skills and all the stuff, whether through the books or through the website. So I'll have that in the description of the show for those of you who are interested. Now you said it will be once next year, right?
Yeah, the SEAL Fit program is once, but Unbeatable Mind is an ongoing program. It's virtual. We have some events, so that's a completely different program. That's really more of our leadership development, for entrepreneurs and executives. And we do corporate training, and I do speaking, and so it's a completely different business. And also, I will say we also have I got a gear company for how weighted rucking is starting to really take off. We have a gear company called bruteforcetraining.com, and we sell these incredible rucksacks for weighted rucking and weight vests and sandbags, austere physical training to really hone your physical and mental toughness. And this is just incredible gear, all made in the USA. So that's another great place to, if you're looking to get busy and
All
to
right.
change up your workout, then you'll get some gear at Brute Force Training.
Well, and you said you do like corporate training as well. So if for
I do corporate training, yeah, speaking engagements. There's a lot of things that I will do, just like you, but it's, I love to do, I'm doing a lot more speaking and corporate work, trying to bring this idea of vertical development, elevating consciousness, expanding awareness, tapping into more greater perspective and compassion. And so I do a lot of speaking on that as well.
so, and of course you have the podcast. What's the name of the podcast?
The Mark Divine Show.
As you just
Easy. Yeah.
all right. Well, again, do check out. Listen, there's a wealth of knowledge and information and access here to Mark Divine, whether through his podcast, through his site, through his work. If you're in the corporate, world and you need some real inspiration, talk. I mean, Kevin, I mean, it's you are up there with the best of the best out there for what you do, and therefore having you on as a trainer or a speaker, it's just going to add value to any company and anyone. So again, for those of you out there, I can tell you this: I'm right now doing just the consulting stuff. I'm not with a particular company, but if I do, and I can tell you when I have a team, and I've done this before, where I invited people to come on and do talks to them and different things. You'll be on the list, dude, because I would love for you to come in
That's
and
awesome.
pump some people. No, seriously, I mean your stuff is just amazing. It's listening to you. I mean, I guarantee you, people are watching and listening. They want to do more because just the idea of like how you break it down, as simple as it is, and it is not easy. It is tough, but there is something of value that people sometimes need to hear to actually highlight
Right.
themselves, and you just bring that up. So thank you. Listen, we're coming to the end of the show. We've exceeded our time, but you know what? It was worth every single second of it, or split second
I
for that
agree.
matter. It was nice having you on, and true honor, of course. Any last words of wisdom you want to leave our audiences with before we close the show?
I would just say take a breath and just sit down and turn your attention inward. Just watch that breath and then hold it, at the top and the bottom. Do some box breathing. And I tell you what, if you can test me on this, if you could do 30 days, 20 minutes a day of box breathing where you inhale 5 count, hold your breath 5 count, or 4, exhale 5 count and hold your breath for 5 count, and just follow that closely, really concentrate on that, it'll change your life. It'll set you on the path to freedom.
Well, listen, I'm not going to add to that one anything because I think that's powerful. So, Mark, thank you so much for being with us, man. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been an honor. Thanks so much. Okay. Booyah.
Yes, sir. Well, all right, folks, this is it. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hopefully, you enjoyed the discussion. Do check out the websites and all the information that will be attached in the description. That's it for us. I'm Hurricane H. We'll be talking soon. New day, new show, new topic, new guest. Bye for now.